Those stories shortly. First, a special investigation into the cruel rock and roll con man who destroyed an angel. Tonight, the man who took Doc Neeson's life savings and left him broke before he died. Reporter Dan Nolan joins me in the studio, and Dan, Doc's family are devastated.
Devastated beyond belief, Trace. Doc Neeson was the voice of the Angels. He sang one of the most iconic Aussie rock tracks of all time, but his dying days were filled with money worries for his family. They hired a private investigator to find this so-called friend who had swindled Doc. 6 months later, the con man couldn't be found, so that's when we stepped in to help.
He's a professional con man.
I think he used Doc. I think he lied to Doc.
You don't know me, mate.
Doc's family needs
You don't
the
know
money
me,
back,
I don't even
okay?
know your name.
It's just despicable, and it's just scum of the earth.
Tonight, we catch the con man nobody could find.
Am I ever gonna see your face again? I want this off, man.
No,
right?
it's not going to be off, Mark.
Yeah.
He cleaned out the late Doc Neeson's life savings.
You're evil.
You've ripped off a dying Aussie rock legend for 100 grand. Don't talk to me about evil.
Now we let Doc's son fulfil a final promise he'd made to his dad.
Where were you when he was dying, mate? When he needed the money, where were you?
It's been a horrible year for those closest to former Angels frontman Bernard Doc Neeson. Son Kieran and partner Annie lost their beloved Doc in June after a 17-month battle with brain cancer.
I wanted to spend his last days with him as much as I could, and I wanted it to be as happy a time as it could be, but instead I'm ratting through all this bloody paperwork.
In the final month of Doc's life, the family was forced to hire a private investigator to hunt down this man, Mark Andrew Philby.
He's a professional con man, is what Mark is. He's a low-life human. He's been going around taking innocent people's money for far too long.
I put a record together in a concert and...
Mark Philby was an event promoter. This is one of the many shows he had the voice of the Angels play in without ever being paid. Dozens of musicians were also duped, promised payments that never came. Sometimes Doc stepped in with his own money.
Doc always helped anybody who would ask, even, to his own detriment.
Partner Annie never trusted Mark Philby, but the ever-generous Doc was being spun story after story.
And he'd say things like, I'm only just getting by on the seat of my pants. I'm out in the street, I'm having a really rough time at the moment. And Doc would always listen.
Philby convinced Doc to loan him money to help his new business. Annie kept all the evidence she could find, eventually demanding Philby sign a statutory declaration admitting he owed Doc $70,000.
This stat deck that you got, this was a pretty key document. This is the actual proof of what he admitted to.
I was surprised he signed it and had it witnessed.
That document would reveal a giant hole in Philby's story. He'd given Doc 60 shares in a company called Play to Win, but when Annie checked it on the ASIC website, the company had been deregistered. It listed Bernard Neeson as having only 30 shares and claimed he'd been paid out in full.
He hadn't been paid 1 cent by Mark, and when I told him that, I'll never forget the look in his eyes. It was like all the light had just gone out of his eyes. It was terrible. And he said, so I've been conned. And I said, yes. I'm sorry.
That conversation happened in Doc's final months and sparked his decision to begin legal action to recover the money.
I made a promise to my father, which was one of the last things that I said to him, that I wouldn't let this go, that I wouldn't let Philby just continue to run around ripping people off.
The family's lawyers hired a private investigator to find Mark Philby, but 6 months later, all they had were false leads.
He's a very slippery character, so no real fixed address. He registers a business to an address where he doesn't. It's not his principal place of residence.
With the clock ticking on the court process to have him served, the Neeson family came to a current affair for help. As luck would have it, Mark Philby had once tried to involve Channel 9 in one of his many businesses. So we called him to ask if he'd come in for a meeting.
The lure of a new payday was too much to resist, but waiting to greet him, Doc Neeson's debt collector.
Mark Philby, got a statement of claim for you, an amended statement of claim.
What's this? What is this?
It relates to $100,000 that you owe to Doc Neeson, Mark. Dan Nolan from A Current Affair. You ripped off money from a dying rock legend. How low can you go?
Matey, if I was you guys, in all honesty, I would turn that off and I'd get a lawyer straight away. Doc is a great friend of mine, and do not insult me or do not do this.
Well, here's Doc's son, Kieran.
Yep,
Kieran Neeson.
You said for 2 years you were going to pay him back. Where were you when he was dying, mate? When he needed the money, where were you?
Matey, I rung
Nowhere
up.
to be
Mate,
seen.
I rung up and...
Nowhere to be seen.
Can we turn
But a
this off for 1
shyster like
second,
Mark
Doc?
Philby doesn't roll over easily.
Hey, Kieran, I know you're upset.
Mate, it's
I
not
understand
about being
it.
upset or not.
Yeah,
You go around ripping people off.
There's
That's
a
what
lot
you've been
more.
doing for a long time.
I'm telling you right now, there's a lot more to this than what you think.
How do
a
you
lot more.
sleep at night, mate?
Mate, I don't sleep well at all.
I'm sure you don't. I wouldn't either if I was walking around pulling that on people.
It's not nice, Kieran, mate.
Neither are you, mate.
Well, you might think that right
Tough
now.
pill to swallow, isn't it?
No, matey.
Over the next 15 minutes, this cornered con man tries every trick he can.
I've only met Kieran once in the hospital there when I visited Doc once.
And what did you tell
right?
him that day in the hospital?
I told him I wouldn't let him down, and I can't
And how
help.
long ago was that?
Well, wait a minute.
Two years ago?
Let's just understand.
Was that 2 years ago?
Do you understand what the situation
Was
is?
that 2 years
you
ago,
don't
Mark?
understand.
Mark, don't give us your lies.
Hey,
Doc's family...
you don't know me, mate.
Doc's family needs
You don't
the
know
money
me. I
back,
don't even
okay?
know your name.
When anger doesn't work, he plays the love card.
I love Doc, and I've always loved Doc.
If he did love my father, over the past 10 years since he's owed him this money, especially in the last 2 years when he's really needed it, he would have done something to help pay it back.
Your dad was a friend of mine all the way along.
He was a friend of yours. What did you do
All
good for
the
him?
way along,
What
mate.
did you do good for him?
Mate, the last
other than
time-
take his money?
Doc Neeson wasn't the only person stung by Mark Philby. We've spoken with 2 more people who say they've lost more than 100 grand each investing in businesses that never got off the ground.
It's the spirit of life. It's our creation.
In another failed venture, even Michael Jackson was hoodwinked. This is a song Philby recorded that was meant to raise millions for the Paralympic Committee, convincing celebrities like Cuba Gooding, Dolly Parton, Keith Urban and the Jacksons to help out for charity. The Paralympic Committee confirmed to us it never received 1 cent.
There's a big trail of people who owed money all over.
Guitarist Mitch Hutchinson and drummer Mick O'Shea were also left unpaid to the tune of 12 grand after playing shows for Philby.
He would just say, there's money coming, just hang in there. I'm not here to burn people.
But the money they're owed didn't have the same impact as what a terminally ill Doc Neeson lost. Partner Annie says he couldn't afford potentially life-saving treatments.
There were opportunities that we could have pursued if we'd had the money. I wanted to take him to the Hallwang Clinic in southern Germany, but we didn't have the money because of Mark.
Annie has no time for any more of Mark Philby's stories or excuses.
Do you think he loved Doc?
No, not at all. I think he used Doc. I think he lied to Doc right from the start.
Matey, I got deals, right?
You've always got deals, mate. You told me that 2 years ago. Where are the deals now?
Doc's son Kieran has been waiting to confront Mark Philby for a long time.
I'm not scared of you, mate.
Mate, you don't have to be scared of me, mate. I love your father. You don't have to be scared of me, and I would never, ever, ever do anything to harm you.
You didn't love Doc, Mark. If you loved Doc, you wouldn't have ripped him off. You wouldn't have exploited his generosity. Don't try and tell his son that you loved his father. You ripped his father off.
With Philby now served, the legal process to reclaim the owed money can finally begin.
You've been running and now you've been caught. So the question is, when are you going to pay the money back?
I promised
That's all
him
we
that
need
I
to
would
know.
chase this up for him, and he said, good on you, son.
Yeah.
I told you I'd stick to it. You make a promise like that to someone you love, mate, you follow it up.
And if you've had any dealings with Mark Philby, we want to know about it. Send us an email or give us a call.